Good. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Great to be here with everyone this afternoon, with our Lieutenant Governor, with Secretary of Education, Pat Tutwiler, with our Acting DESE Commissioner, Johnston. Thank you for being here. We wanted to come out today to recognize the hard work of our students, educators, parents, and schools. Because in the nation's report card, which was released earlier today, Massachusetts students stand alone at number one in the country. We're number one in the country. And we're number one in the country on these NAEP scores across all four categories: fourth grade math, fourth grade reading, eighth grade math, eighth grade reading. We have reclaimed the lead in categories that Massachusetts lost in 2022. And for the first time in 8 years, Massachusetts is number one across the board. While national scores continue to decline after the pandemic, what we've seen here in Massachusetts is that we importantly have begun to halt that slide. So these results we think are important to share with the public because people are working very hard. Our students are working hard, parents are working hard, educators and school districts are working hard. And remember, they're working hard to help dig out from a devastating pandemic that has been covered extensively, reported on extensively. But today, I am really proud and grateful to all who've worked so hard to get us to this point where Massachusetts has the number one rating in the entire country for scores across all categories tested. There is more work to do, obviously, but where other states have continued to see a decline, in Massachusetts, the good news is we've halted that decline. And as you know from investments announced in our budget and other things we've done over the last 2 years, we continue to invest in education in historic ways, from early ed all the way to higher ed, and I think that those investments are paying off. I believe that having the best schools in the country is absolutely essential to our economy. It's essential, most importantly, to the success and well-being of kids and their families, and it's how our workforce will remain the most talented in the world. It's also proof, as I mentioned, that we need to continue to make the right investments. Since we took office 2 years ago, we made students a top priority. We brought record levels of state aid to our schools. We made breakfast and lunch free for all students, important to keep them focused and organized. We expanded preschool classrooms and affordable early education. We made a focused effort to reduce chronic absenteeism and to help more students get back into and actually stay in the classroom. We stood up 24-hour, 7 days a week community behavioral health centers in 31 cities and towns, along with increased school-based support, which will help the mental health and well-being of our young people. I also know that there is more work to do. We must fully recover the progress lost during the pandemic. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer, and we're doing the best in the country in terms of addressing that. We also need to continue to work on closing the gaps for our Black and Latino students, English language learners, and students with disabilities. That's a fundamental priority of ours. And we need to make sure that every student is getting access to the mental health care and services that they need. Our goal is not number one. Our goal is to be the very best in terms of ensuring the true success and well-being of every student. So we're proud of being number one, but that's not the end in and of itself. It's about, making sure that we're really doing all that we can to support our young people and our young learners. As I mentioned, our budget continues to propose record funding for our schools. In addition, we also proposed a $25 million investment for the second year of our nation-leading literacy launch program. This will get more schools and more students the best quality reading instruction, especially in the early grades. And we proposed another $25 million this year for high-dosage tutoring. The studies show it's a real recipe for success, and we're going to lean into that here in Massachusetts. I know that all states are out there working hard to try to get this right. But I know and can say with confidence that Massachusetts is, in fact, leading the way. Again, I want to thank our students for the work that they put in. I want to thank our parents and all the supports out there for our young people. I want to thank our teachers, educators, principals, and staff across all of our schools. And I want to thank our nonprofits, our colleges, our businesses who partner with our schools, and those that provide out-of-school programming. And I want to thank Secretary Tutwiler and this administration's entire education team for the work that you have been doing. I know not only do you bring real focus to all of this, and you and the team have been working your tails off. I also know how much you care for our young people and their success, and your true passion for that. So thank you, and I'd now like to invite the Lieutenant Governor up to say a few words.
Thanks, Gov. Thank you, Governor. As the mom of 3 kids who attended public schools right here in Massachusetts, and someone who had the good fortune to chair a school committee for 17 years, I know it really does take a village, and we have a really strong village here in Massachusetts. And I want to add my congratulations to all of the students and educators and paraprofessionals and cafeteria workers and custodians and everyone in our schools who really hustle every single day to make sure that our kids had the knowledge to perform not just well on these tests, but to perform at a level where we are the best in the nation on these tests. And it is really all about that hard work that happens in our schools every single day. You know, as the governor said, when we make the right investments to support what's happening on the ground, our students can really shine, and that's what this work is all about. And that's one of the reasons we're so focused on some of the next steps. We know what's working, we know what we need to do, and have plans to help get us there. In addition to the items the governor mentioned, I just want to say a few words about the FY26 budget that we've proposed. In that, there's some important investments. Fully funding the Student Opportunity Act, again, bringing $7.3 billion in state funding to school districts. That's an increase of $420 million this year. It's a pretty significant increase in this FY26 budget. We're also proposing the per student minimum would increase from $30 per student to $75 per student. I think that's the biggest increase we've seen in an administration's budget filing out of the gate. That's going to give another boost to 77% of the districts statewide. We're also proposing to increase funding for things like special ed, school buses, transportation needs. We know those are big expenses for the districts, and so if we can take some of the pressure off from the state, those are additional dollars that can go into sort of the classroom supports that we know students need and frankly schools want to give. We're drawing on every possible resource to get more support to our schools. And I think we're trying to be as innovative as we can with it. The governor mentioned our funding for cutting edge literacy instruction and high dosage tutoring. Again, strategies that we know that work. This week, Secretary Tutwiler and I were at the South Memorial Elementary School in Peabody. The secretary got down on the floor to read to those kids. It was good.
Not gonna happen today.
That is one of the 15 districts that received a literacy launch grant in the first round. This is the extra effort to make sure we're using evidence-based literacy practices, and you can really see just how passionate the teachers were about this reading instruction. The kids were attentive to it. It's just clear that everyone's ready to take it to another level, and when we provide those resources, people really step up. And these are the sort of foundational investments and skills that set students up for success. Like, reading really is important, especially in these lower grades, and we are all about working together to deliver better results in those areas. And that's why our students and our schools are #1 in the nation. And that's why we're going to stay #1. It's those sorts of investments that have a lasting power to help ensure that young people get the best start in life and the best opportunity for success. I'm really pleased to invite up our Secretary of Education, our state leader in all efforts, Pat Tutwiler.
Thank you. Oh, did I get applause?
I give you an applause.
None of them did, but that's all right. Let me first begin with gratitude. Gratitude to students, first and foremost, their educators, the village, the families and caregivers, the school counselors, the cafeteria workers, all the people who lean into making sure that our students get what they need in schools each and every day. I think what we learned today about the NAEP scores really lifts up and acknowledges all the hard work that they're doing. I also should say, as a parent of 3 children who attended public schools in Massachusetts, I'm deeply grateful for the work that's done in schools every single day. When I started as secretary, I knew that the road back from the pandemic was not going to be short. It takes time to heal, and I'd ask that you recall that the fourth grade students represented in the results that we have access to today were in kindergarten during the height of the pandemic and missed key foundational learning. Team Massachusetts continues to prioritize education, and so while today's results are not quite where we want them to be, we want to be number one for all students. There is recognition of the work to get there. Progress is slow, but with the administration's investments, everything that the LG and the governor just lifted up, and prioritization of early literacy learning, and strengthening our public schools, we're building a foundation to go fast. Our fourth grade math scores are back to pre-pandemic levels. While nationally gaps increased, they did not here. They still exist, and we have work to do, but they are not getting worse. I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about one investment that both the Gov and LG lifted up, and that's the investment of $25 million in high-dosage tutoring that's proposed in the administration's budget. We want to reach 10,000 students immediately through this initiative to address pandemic-related learning loss and accelerate learning growth for students in kindergarten through grade 3 by prioritizing students in grade 1. This will support activities such as early learning tutoring services for students who've not yet met relevant benchmarks, administering screening assessments for students, as well as collecting and sharing pre- and post-tutoring data, and providing in-person and/or virtual foundational skills-focused tutoring services. High-impact tutoring has been shown to be 15 times more effective than standard tutoring models, and studies demonstrate that it increases student learning by an additional 3 to 15 months across grade levels. We are moving with urgency in this moment, that this moment requires, with the dollars to get this right. Between Literacy Launch, which is about changing the systems of literacy instruction in districts, and tutoring to reach students right now. With this combined $50 million investment, we are all in on helping kids to read and read well. As the Gov frequently says, Massachusetts is the birthplace of public education. We are home to the first public school and the first university. For years, have been and continue to be a national leader. This didn't happen by accident or happenstance. It is the direct result of a simple but yet profound principle that Massachusetts has embraced for years. Every individual student in the Commonwealth is entitled to a high-quality education, regardless of their circumstances. Massachusetts is the best place to live, to start a family, to go to school, and to work. We have a long history of educational excellence and will continue to lead the way in making sure that all students are thriving. They deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
Start on topic. Mr. Secretary, could you speak to, was there anything in the results that surprised you, or anything that was raised a gap that you think needs to be addressed, or anything like that?
Well, as has been mentioned by all three of us, we're well aware of the gaps and are leaning in with the investments and the strategies to address them. I have to say that I was not personally surprised by the results. Thankfully, in Massachusetts, we've got an assessment, the MCAS. It tracks really well with the NAEP assessment, and so we have a sense for how students are doing, and the outcomes on the NAEP pretty much track with what we have seen in the MCAS. I'll also say, as a former superintendent, I'm only 2 years removed from the role, I recall quite vividly the experience of leading during the pandemic, and as I said in the formal comments, the road back is not going to be short. We're talking about adaptive challenges. We're talking about working with students directly who experienced major disruptions in their learning. This is not a quick fix. It's going to take time, but as the results are clearly indicating, we're getting the work done, and I'm really, really grateful for the work that educators are doing to move students along.
Mr. Secretary, given that districts are going to be coming up with their own grad requirements now, with the removal of the MCAS grad requirement, are you concerned at all that it might throw a speed bump in the way of any of the progress that's being made here with districts each taking their own sort of approaches?
Well, the challenge that you're lifting up is a high school challenge. Recall that the MCAS still has to be taken in high school, and it is still an accountability criterion. And so the expectation is that students will take that assessment as seriously as they have historically. And so I don't see the space that we're in right now relative to districts coming up with plans to certify mastery in the content areas required. I don't see a challenge, in the time being related to that.
So you don't see elimination of the MCAS impacting these grades necessarily?
Which grades?
Well, the results, I'm saying, the results of because it's, a different,
Scenario. Yeah, what I would say again is that the MCAS still matters in high school. It is still part of how high schools are graded according to their accountability. Achievement is 40% of the accountability weight, and so the expectation is that educators and students will be leaning into it with the same level of seriousness that they did prior to.
The data showed a widening gap in Massachusetts between students who were economically advantaged and those who were not. What is the administration planning to do to start to close that gap?
Yeah, that's actually a national phenomenon and one that was exacerbated by the pandemic. At least that's what the data is telling us. I think all the investments that both the Gov and the LG just lifted up relative to the early literacy focus, making sure that districts are well resourced. There's more to come relative to the literacy initiative, and we think that these are the kinds of things that are going to move the needle. I'll also lift up, we're talking about early elementary school, but we can't discount the importance of early education, preschool, and those early learning experiences between birth and 4 years old. There are gargantuan investments. We are taking that sector seriously to ensure that students have access to those experiences, because we know the data is really clear that students, if they have any experience in early education and care, they are more ready for kindergarten. The challenges around literacy are far fewer, and so we're leaning into this in a very robust, comprehensive way to ensure that those gaps get closed.
Governor, Pat, I think one thing to add to that,
Please.
CPS, is I think it's one of the reasons we're actually making sure a lot of these investments go to gateway cities, really targeting districts that have students from a diverse background. And that's taking a conscious effort to put our thumb on the scale to try and close some of those equity gaps, whether it's gateway to pre-K, the high dosage tutoring, the literacy launch grants. We're looking at gateway cities. We're looking at districts that have economically disadvantaged students to try and make sure those services are delivered there on the ground. I think that is very intentional, trying to close these very, real equity gaps that exist.
Governor, the Attorney General said yesterday that Massachusetts tried to make a $40 million withdrawal from Medicaid, I believe on Monday, but had not yet received payment. It seems to be linked to the federal funding freeze or maybe some glitches in the Medicaid system. What have you learned so far about that? Have we gotten our money? And what else have you seen impacted by that funding freeze?
Well, let me just say I'm really grateful to Attorney General Campbell and her team for moving so swiftly to get into court and to pursue litigation to end what is an illegal abuse of power and an overreach by the president. Yesterday's actions were devastating. I've never had, and many people have talked about how, in fact, unprecedented this is. But yesterday, with a turn of the switch, the Trump administration cut off federal funding to states. And that's federal funding that touches everybody in one way or another in our states. We're talking about education here today. We need and we rely on the flow of federal dollars to support Title I for low-income students, to support early education and childcare, to support special education in all of our districts, to support loans like Pell Grants. There's so much that we depend on. Did I mention Head Start? Yesterday, we were receiving dozens of calls from panicked childcare centers, Head Starts, who don't have months, let alone weeks or days of cash flow to be able to stay open. And them not being able to draw down from federal accounts is devastating. Similarly for Medicaid, all states have people who are on Medicaid in their states. And yesterday, that was shut down. Again, I'm glad that the lawyers are back in court, states are in court, not-for-profits are in court, and the courts acted to put a temporary pause on this, but this will go forward. And, when you talk about education, everything that we have done, everything that we are working on is about improving success for our students, for our young people. Most importantly, it's important for them, it's important for our economy, it's important for our employers and our workforce. And what the president and the federal administration did yesterday was to take us back in every way, from early education up through higher ed, with the decision to cut off federal funding. So the litigation will go forward, but I can't overstate how unprecedented this is. I believe it's illegal, and the courts will ultimately rule that way. But more importantly, just the impact. Seniors who aren't able to pay heating bills because they were cut off from access to federally funded heating assistance programs. Families who are relying on assistance for housing and for food. I talked about construction projects yesterday. The cutting off federal funding puts lives at risk, it puts jobs at risk, and it's really, really devastating.
What about that $40 million payment the Attorney General mentioned? Have we gotten that yet from Medicaid? Are we still locked out of Medicaid today?
I don't believe the system is fully operable, but we'll have to confirm where it exactly is. We didn't have clarification as a short while ago.
Governor, the state money for this shelter system, the emergency assistance shelter system, is set to run out very soon. We're not seeing imminent action from the legislature. I'm curious what the administration's message has been to providers and to the legislature on, what's going to happen after that money dries up.
I know discussions are ongoing right now with the legislature. We're aware, I know they're aware of the calendar on this, so hopefully we'll be able to get some resolution soon. We'll see.
Last question. You were talking a lot about investments, and I guess I pose this to both you, Secretary and Governor. All these investments being made that lead to success in education. Without that federal funding, are those successes possible? Will that really handicap the state moving forward on some of these goals?
Well, we are going to do everything that we can as a state to ensure that we stay number one and that we are delivering to students, to families, to educators and school districts everything that we can to help them ensure that success. I'll also be honest with you, federal funding is important. Think about all the kids out there and families who rely on special education, who rely on Title I programming, all of the districts who all districts are impacted by this. And remember, dollars removed from those programs puts additional burden on the schools and those districts to cover all, other expenses. So this is really bad. And, we were talking about early education. I'm proud that Massachusetts, not only would I say come to Massachusetts because you're going to get the best public education in the country, and you're going to have access to the best higher education in the country. We're also the state, and the only state where we made funding for early education and childcare available when that funding went away after COVID. We think it's really important because we know the results. When you fund early education, when you fund Head Start, when you fund pre-K in gateway cities. So cuts to federal funding hurt all of that. And in doing so, they hurt all of our communities. They hurt our families. They hurt our economic growth. And, that's why it's a really bad thing. Secretary, do you have anything you want to?
You said it, Deb.
Those are federal mandates, right?
Do you want to say?
I think some of the Title I funding, it's a federal mandate. Special education is required, and to then cut the funding just feels like you're really pulling the rug out from families, from students, from school districts, from communities, and I think that's what we're concerned about when we see these pauses and halts.
What about preschool meals? Will the state be able to continue that program without federal
No, is my quick answer to that. So yes to your answer, would have supreme impact based on what the Governor LG said. But keep in mind that the state funds in part the Universal School Meals Program. The rest comes from federal dollars. And so it would be extremely challenging to take that on exclusively with state dollars.
Now, Secretary, as we're standing here, Governor, as we're standing here today with the freeze in place, are you aware of any of the sort of service interruptions that you just described? Funding for meals, Mr. Secretary, or Head Start disruptions, or any sort of closures?
Well, I can't speak to the exact state of play with respect to all disruptions, but I'll tell you, I mean, just based on the calls that we received yesterday, the calls we continue to receive, not only did this harm us because the flow of money actually stopped yesterday. I don't know if any of you went on the various federal websites. You could not get on. It was shut down. That's never happened before in our history, that our entire federal government just turned the switch. We continue, though, to receive calls from our universities, from our nonprofits, from our child care centers, from businesses that got construction projects online and out there. And, you know, the amount of not only it's bad to have ended the funding, but just the amount of disruption and chaos. We've all got jobs to do, right? We're trying to move an economy forward. We're trying to move an agenda forward. But the disruption, the chaos, and this, you know, unfortunately, fortunately, it is in court right now, and I hope we get a quick resolution of this. But this doesn't make sense for any state. I don't know of a governor who would support in any way, shape, or form cutting off the flow of federal dollars to our states. Why would you do that, right? Talking housing, transportation, healthcare, education, like basics that I think most people are supportive of and want to see continue.
Governor, you pledged your work with the incoming administration. Does something like the federal funding freeze make you rethink that? Rethink your pledge to work with the incoming?
No, let me clarify what my pledge was. I will work with the administration where it benefits people of Massachusetts, where it benefits our economy, where it benefits our business. And I've also said I will be the first to stand up for the interests of Massachusetts residents, of our businesses, of our economy, when the federal administration and President Trump do something that hurts us. Yesterday was an example of President Trump and the administration taking action that directly hurts Massachusetts residents, hurts Americans around this country, which is why I stand in strong support for the litigation that the Attorney General filed, and why my administration will be continuing to stand up to what really is an illegal and unprecedented overreach by President Trump.
Thanks, everyone. Do you have a comment
Thanks.
about the report of the legislative policy body? Thanks. With the migrant